On today's show, it's mailbag time. We're going to look ahead at potential postseason matchups. What should the starting lineup be? Other lineups that work? What has changed about this team? And when is it time to start resting the starters? We'll do all that and so much more on this Friday mailbag edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It is a Mailbag Friday edition of Locked On Cavs. Thought this would be a really good time to do it with the Cavs having back-to-back days off. Of course, the team does take on the Memphis Grizzlies tonight in Memphis as they look to go for win number 16 in a row, which would set a franchise record and just continue this remarkable, magical season that the Cleveland Cavaliers are having. But I did want to start with a little bit of an eye towards the postseason, because there's been a lot of talk this week with the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunders and the Cavs, because those three teams are all, as you know, as at least as I believe, and if you listen to the show, I'm going to guess you probably believe this too, but in the top tier of NBA teams. So the first question on the board today from the Clevalier: Boston is able to exploit Cleveland with one-on-one matchups. Is there anything Cleveland could potentially exploit on Boston if both teams are fully healthy? So the Celtics, as they play, if you watch them, you know that they get very, very matchup hunting heavy, right? Like, think about the game the Cavs won in Cleveland, where what happened? The Boston Celtics wanted to just attack Darius Garland over and over and over again, and he held up pretty well. I thought he did a good job in that game of forcing Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis into some difficult shots. I thought Garland was really physical in that game. And then you fast forward to the game that the Cavs won in Boston. The Celtics had a lot of early success in this game attacking Max Strus. They were really trying to go after him off the dribble, and it was something that Max really did struggle with on that night, and it's not necessarily where his strength as a defender lies. Like, I don't look at him as somebody that's a great point of attack stopper. To flip that, though, we have seen, I think, probably the Celtics do a good job of getting teams out of what they want to do on both ends of the floor, and they turn it into a matchup hunting contest where, if you guys can think back to that Houston Rockets team that was really good, that won, I think, 65 games, I believe it was. I think they went 65-17 that year. It was LeBron's last year in Cleveland. And the Rockets had the Warriors with Kevin Durant down 3-2 in a series, and Chris Paul hurt his hamstring, and, we'll never know what would have happened otherwise. But what the Rockets were able to do was they forced the Warriors into just kind of turning into an isolation-heavy team. That's not who the Cavs want to be. The Cavs want to be a team that moves the basketball really well. They want to look much more like the pre-Kevin Durant and Golden State Warriors than they want to look like a team like the Boston Celtics. And it's not to say that there's a right or wrong way to do this, like play basketball, but that's the preferred style that the Cavs have. They don't want to be heliocentric. They want to be a team that involves everybody. They want to have a high assist total. And in the games against Boston this year, the Cavs have really not had high assist totals because they've sort of, I don't know that it's necessarily fallen into a trap of matchup hunting, but the assists have been down because the ball hasn't moved as well. And you give Boston credit, obviously, for that, for being a good defensive team. But it does get to, okay, well, what are the matchups the Cavs can exploit? Because the game in Boston that the Cavs won, what happened? Sam Hauser got picked on over and over and over again. And in a postseason, and Sam, I think, I believe he played like 33 or 34 minutes in that game for Boston, and Sam Hauser is not going to be playing that number of minutes in the postseason for the Celtics. Like, I just do not see how that would be possible for him to be on the floor. That, like, if that happens, if he's on the floor that much, something went bad for Boston. So in the 4 games that the Cavs played against the Celtics, this was their assist total. The first game they lost, which I think there is a case to be made that was actually the best game the Cavs played against Boston all year, was their first loss of the season back on November 19th. And yes, it does have to be mentioned, the Cavs were missing 4 rotation players at the time. Max Strus did not play in that one. Dean Wade did not play in that one. Karis LeVert did not play in that one. And Isaac Okoro did not play in that one. The Cavs had 30 assists that night. Since then, the game they won on December 1st, they had 22 assists. The game they lost in Cleveland on February 4th, they had 18 assists. The game they won February 28th in Boston, they had 23 assists. So they've not had very high assist totals. Like you look at what they've done, and these are among the lowest that they've had. I believe 3 of the games for the Cavs in this have been 3 of their 8 fewest assist games this season. They're a team that excels moving the basketball. That's when they look their best. But I do think, to answer this question more specifically, I think the matchup is kind of whoever's defending Donovan Mitchell. Like, that is the matchup that the Cavs can exploit, because the Boston Celtics, I think, have shown they're going to put Drew Holiday on Darius Garland. And I don't think that Drew is, while he's really strong, I don't think he's big enough to give problems to Donovan Mitchell. Like, the guy that Donovan Mitchell struggles with is Lou Dort. And I just think Lou Dort is more physically imposing than Drew Holiday is. Drew is strong. I think Lou Dort is stronger, but I don't know that Drew is strong enough to give Donovan fits the way that he has in his past given Darius Garland a lot of trouble on that end of the floor. The way that these two teams line up, the Celtics, could they have Jaylen Brown defend Donovan Mitchell? They could, but that's why I do think it's partially important to have DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup or playing alongside the rest of the core 4 for significant chunks of that game, because then Boston's hand is kind of forced. They're going to have Kristaps Porzingis start on Jarrett Allen defending, like that's obvious. Jason Tatum's going to be playing 4. He's going to probably have to defend Evan Mobley. If they're going to put someone smaller on Evan, that's going to create a mismatch problem that the Cavs should be able to take advantage. If they want to put Jaylen Brown on Donovan Mitchell, that means Derek White is probably on DeAndre Hunter. And I do think that is a size advantage that Hunter can take advantage of. Like, that is something that this trade has added to what the Cavs can do offensively. So I think that those are really the matchups that the Cavs can look at. Like, the Cavs don't want to be the team that hunts mismatches the same way that the Boston Celtics do. But I do think that with the Cavs core 4 plus DeAndre Hunter specifically, they can create more mismatch advantages against Boston than they previously could have. When the regular starting 5 is out there, I think it's a little bit more difficult. Now, if Boston's going to want to switch at everything, and Derek White is still a good defender, I just don't think he's a Donovan Mitchell stopper. I don't know that anyone on Boston is. Like, Donovan has more points per game against Boston than any other team in the NBA. Donovan has the most points per game against Boston, when you hit, I forget how many games like the minimum is, but he has played better against Boston than any player in NBA history. And that's not just this team, but he had 30 points plus in all 4 games against the Celtics this year. And I just think that is something that is translatable to the postseason. I think that's something that matters as you take a look at, okay, well, how would these two teams match up? The Celtics are going to try and get, especially if DeAndre Hunter is in the starting lineup, they're going to try and get Darius Garland switched down to most likely Jason Tatum. Like, that's going to be the advantage they look for, or they're going to do it with Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown has had more success in that matchup than Jason Tatum has, in part because I think Jaylen Brown is more willing to go to the rim, where Jason Tatum wants to take 17, 18 footers, and the Cavs are going to live with that. He's going to make a lot of them, but that's how you see, or that's how you get the game that he had a couple of weeks ago where, he scored 46 points. He needed 37 shots to do it because the Cavs were able to, again, sort of, while the Celtics want to bait the Cavs and do a bit of a mismatch hunting party, the Cavs were able to bait Jason Tatum into a mid-range party, and that's a battle they're willing to fight. Like, that's the battle they want to fight. And there could be games in the Eastern Conference Finals where Tatum's awesome, he's super efficient in the mid-range, and Boston wins, because if that happens, your avenues to winning do close a little bit. They're not extinct, but they shrink a little bit. But I think that is probably the best path forward. And I think that there are those mismatch advantages that we can see the Cavs go after in the postseason. I don't think that there are a plethora of them, just like I don't think there are a ton of advantages that the Celtics really do have over the Cavs. I think that these two teams are very, very evenly matched. And I think that because of that, it should, and both teams have to get there, but it should make for a wildly exciting and entertaining and just a super high level of basketball being played between these two teams in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I expect the champion this year to come out of the group of three that we've talked about. We're going to talk about why next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel's giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's going to be cutting down the nets at the end of it all. Maybe you have your eye on a few underdogs, conference tournaments going on right now. Maybe one of those teams can go deep on a run in March, and FanDuel makes it easy to pick those underdogs, Cinderella stories, even favorites with spreads, totals, game props, whatever it is you're interested in. FanDuel Sportsbook has you covered. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something that is exciting to bet on. I was perusing FanDuel a little bit earlier on Thursday, and FanDuel has something new up there. They've got betting odds for the NBA Finals MVP. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of OKC is the odds-on favorite at plus 210. Jason Tatum is next at plus 300, and then coming in third, Donovan Mitchell at plus 650. The value I really like, though, is either Darius Garland at plus 3,200 or Evan Mobley at plus 6,000. And hear me out as to why. If the Cavs are going to see the Thunder in the finals, Donovan has not done well against Lou Dort historically. I think that for the Cavs to win that series, that might need to be Evan Mobley is the best player on the Cavs series. Could that translate into a finals MVP for Mobley? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but that is now available on FanDuel. So like I said, visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops and NBA action all tournament long, where your first $5 bet can win you $200 in bonus bets with a victory. Again, head over to FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said at the top of the show, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're signed up for the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That is LockedOnDaily.com for ultimate team and league coverage. And start your day with the free Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. Cleve Dog Guy posts, is it fair to say if you put OKC, Boston, and Cleveland in a hat and pull the name, that's your champ? I do think it's a fair thing to say. I think that those three teams are very clearly the three best teams in basketball. And I've mentioned previously on this podcast when I've done radio appearances lately, I've written about it lately over at the Inside Shot. There is a canyon, I think, between those three teams and whoever you want to view as the fourth team in the NBA, whether it's the Lakers, whether it's Denver, maybe it's the New York Knicks, maybe it's somebody else, whatever team you view as number 4, there's a very sizable gap between those three teams and whoever is next. So OKC has the best net rating in basketball. They have had the number 1 defense all year, and their offense has been much, much better lately than it had been in the regular season. That said, their defense has taken a little bit of a dip. They are only 4th in defensive rating since February 10th. So it's over a month now. I was looking at that they are not 4th. They are 11th in defensive rating. They're 4th in net rating since February 10th. Maybe it's the Warriors who are just ahead of OKC in net rating since that time. But it's been over a month of OKC playing great offense and not as good defense, which I think is something to monitor. But I think that the most likely outcome might be OKC winning the title as of right now, because I look at the Eastern Conference and there's no doubt that 3 through 15 in the West is much, much better than 3 through 15 in the East. And that could trip up OKC. And I think the matchups matter a lot in the Western Conference when you look at the playoffs. But I also don't see a team in the West. And this isn't to say that OKC is invincible and they have to go out and prove it in the playoffs the same way the Cavs have to go out and prove it in the playoffs. But I think that their chances of making the finals are higher than either Boston or Cleveland, because Boston or Cleveland will have to likely go through the other one, where OKC doesn't have a challenger, I think, of the same level that there is in the Eastern Conference. So I think if you're looking like playing the percentages, I think that the chances of OKC making the finals are higher than either Boston or Cleveland, because those two teams have a tougher conference finals matchup than OKC will. But I do think I would be stunned if the NBA champion comes out of a group that's not those three. Like, those three teams are far and away the best right now in the NBA. So the Celtics are third in net rating this season. They've been really good. They haven't been as dominant, I think, as they were last year. Like, they were a much better team last year. OKC is 1, the Cavs are 2, Boston is 3. There is a 3-point net rating differential between Boston and the 4th place team in Memphis. That is essentially the same differential between number 4. So number 3 and number 4, there's that difference. Between 4 and 10 is about the same difference. Like, that's just how big of a gap there is between number 3 and number 4. Next question comes from Charger John. When will we realistically start sitting our starters? Is it with 5 games left, 2 games left? So I don't think that there's going to be like they get a week off. And I do think that part of this is because they will have a week off between the end of the regular season and the beginning of the playoffs for them. So their final regular season game is April 13th. It's at home against Indiana. It's a 1:00 start. Maybe they sit in that game. I don't know. But they won't play again until game 1 of whoever they play in the first round, which will be Sunday, April 20th, probably an afternoon start. Like, that's how the schedule is going to work out there. And that means that they have to learn how to manage that time. And yes, that time will be very good for recovery. They'll be able to feel fresh. But there's also the rest versus rust debate, right? Like, you don't want the team to be rusty going into the postseason. You want them to find the balance of being well rested. That is an important thing to try and figure out. So if you look at the schedule for the Cavs down the stretch, like, they have this West Coast trip. And then after that, they have a few difficult games, and it's not as if anyone's going to be shut down. The way that I think things are going to happen is a lot like this past week, where we saw Donovan Mitchell miss a game because of rest and miss another game with a very minor injury. We saw Evan Mobley miss a game because of rest. We saw Ty Jerome miss a game because of rest. I think we're going to see those sprinkled in. Like, I would be surprised if, and the Cavs have a back-to-back next week. They play Tuesday in Los Angeles against the LA Clippers. They play Wednesday in Sacramento against the Kings. And then I believe they have 2 more back-to-backs after that. They have a back-to-back March 27th at home against San Antonio and March 28th on the road against Detroit. I would be surprised if the key players for the Cavs play both ends of that back-to-back. Like, maybe Donovan Mitchell plays against San Antonio at home. Maybe he doesn't play in Detroit the very next night. Maybe Darius Garland plays in Detroit, the site of his most recent game-winning buzzer beater against the Pistons, but doesn't play the night before against the Spurs. And then they have another back-to-back April 10th and 11th in Indy and in New York. Now, that's the last week of the season. So maybe they do want to, maybe everyone rests, and this is tough because it's a nationally televised game on the 10th. But maybe the Cavs want to rest guys on the 10th and then play everybody on the 11th. It's kind of like their final tune-up at the end of the regular season. But I do think that we're not going to see, for the most part, there might be a game here or there where several guys sit and the Cavs just kind of punt on it. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a game here, a game there, trying to make sure that everybody is as well rested and refreshed as possible going into the postseason. I do think that should be the goal for the Cavs. They want to play their best basketball when it matters the most. And that is something that you have to think about. That's how you have to manage the rest of this regular season. It's not about chasing 70 wins. Now, they could get there and they can rest guys and still win games, because we've seen them rest guys numerous times throughout this winning streak, and they've still won 15 straight as I sit here and record this. So that stuff you do have to think about, but I just don't foresee this team really putting the pedal down through the tape. I think they're probably going to want to find spots where it makes sense to rest guys. Maybe not everybody all at once, more often than not, but I just think that's kind of the direction that we are going to go. Last one here before I start diving into some lineup stuff that I do find really interesting, but Jurassic Park Mark asks, on Blue Sky, 2 teams in NBA history have 70 wins in a season. Both of those teams had an MVP. Is there a realistic chance that any Cavalier gets serious consideration if they finish with 70 plus wins? So of course, the 2 teams that have won 70 games or more in a season, the 95-96 Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan won MVP, and the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors, Stephen Curry won MVP unanimously. I do not think it's in the cards for the Cavs to have somebody win MVP. That said, I would expect Donovan Mitchell finishes in the top 5. If the Cavs finish with 70 wins, that probably boosts him up a little bit. Like, he might finish 3rd in MVP voting if the Cavs get to that 70 win mark. But I just think that what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has done all season, what Nikola Jokic has done all season in Denver, I think those guys are going to be recognized with that honor. And I think that they both deserve it. And I do think one of the things that hurts Donovan Mitchell in this discussion is the fact that his minutes are not very high. And it's through no fault of his own. It is because the Cavs are approaching this season with the playoffs in mind, and they've won so many games in blowout fashion that he's not playing a ton of minutes this year. And I think that is something that you just do have to think about. Obviously, that doesn't mean he deserves the MVP, but if the Cavs get to 70 wins, I think there's a good case for him to be 3rd. I would be stunned at this point if Donovan Mitchell is not on an All-NBA team, the first All-NBA team, I should say. And I do think that ultimately he will finish 5th in MVP voting, which would be the best finish of his career. And I think he very much deserves it. But right now, I think it's going to be Shai, Nikola Jokic, probably Giannis, probably Jason Tatum, and then Donovan Mitchell. I think that's where, as of right now, I think that's what the most common ballot is going to look like. Now, the Cavs obviously look different now than they did earlier in the season. So what lineups has Kenny Atkinson been leaning upon? What have we seen more of? What would I like to see more of? We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check out your bank account and wonder, whoa, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of your finances. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and you start building wealth. Monarch Money can help you realize how much you're spending on food delivery, things like that. And now just budget smarter and you can save more with their help. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan your long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever too. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. Again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show on YouTube. And if you're watching right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. And Scott K4780 on YouTube, he asks, Kenny's been trying out different lineups for specific situations, I imagine. What are the Cavs' basic lineups and what new lineups have caught your eyes? So I think when you talk about any new lineups, you are talking about lineups that involve DeAndre Hunter, because DeAndre Hunter is the only really new addition. Like Javonte Green's played in a couple of games. I don't look at the very small sample size of him as really having an effect on anything, but DeAndre Hunter, I think it's fair to say, does. So in a small sample size, DeAndre Hunter with the core four, that would be Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, has been really good. So in 7 games so far, that's a different lineup. But so far, that lineup has not played huge minutes together, which I do think is something that needs to change. Like, I do think that the Cavs need to have lineups where DeAndre Hunter is with the core four a little bit more than what we've seen, because I think that's going to be something that's very important. Like I talked about finding the matchup advantages with Boston, and that is something the Cavs are going to need to do. So according to Cleaning the Glass, the core four plus DeAndre Hunter has played 40 possessions so far, which is not a big enough sample size to draw any conclusions from. It is a net rating of plus 22.5. It's scoring 120 points per 100 possessions and has a defensive rating of 97.5 points per 100 possession. That is a little bit skewed because the first game that group played together was when the Cavs played the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they held the Wolves for 0 points in the first 5 minutes of that game. So it's a little bit skewed because of that. But that group has been really good when it's played together. We've seen it more lately, closing a couple of games out. The other ones that I look at that involve Hunter, the lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter, and Evan Mobley. This typically happens with they typically go to this with about 3 minutes left in the first quarter and play it for about 5 or so minutes into the second quarter sometimes. Maybe not that deep into the second quarter, but that group has played 7 games together. The net rating is plus 32. That group has dominated opponents. It's been really, really good. And then the other one you look at too, which is kind of the first bench lineup the Cavs throw out, because the first 3 guys that check out are Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and then Max Strus will check out a few minutes after them. But Darius Garland, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter, and Jared Allen has a plus 40 net rating. Now, this is a smaller sample size than the lineup before, but that group has been really, really good together too. And that is something that I would like to see maybe a little bit more of. And then going off the lineup stuff, Jack JSP on Blue Sky asks, how much more do the starting 5 of the core 4 plus Hunter play together in the playoffs, or will the Cavs stick with the nearly full alternating DGJA and Mitchell Mobley lineups? So right now, and I don't know that the best way to look at it is the core 4 or even the pairings that the Cavs have had. And obviously, like every lineup that you can look at for the Cavs, like all of that has just been successful, and that's because they're 55-10. And it's hard to really nitpick this data with a team that is as historically good as the Cavs are. But right now, I think the best way to look at it is how many minutes together are Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley playing? Because we have seen it like once or maybe twice where the Cavs will close a game or play long stretches without Evan Mobley. But we have so much more frequently seen them close a game or play these long stretches in a game without Jared Allen. And to me, that's why looking at this group of 3 players matters. So right now, since February 10th, and a lot of the data I pull is from that date because that is when DeAndre Hunter started playing for the Cavs, and the Cavs just fundamentally changed. So since February 10th, Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley play 15 minutes per game together. During the postseason, and maybe this isn't like in the first round, maybe this changes in the second round, or maybe this changes in the conference finals, but when the Cavs are going to be up against a wall at some point, and that wall just might be named the Boston Celtics, I think that's the number that goes up. Instead of that triumvirate playing 15 minutes together, is it 20 minutes together? Is it 22 minutes together? Is it 24 minutes together? Because all 3 of those guys have not played very heavy minutes this year. That is obviously not that's not some wild revelation. Like, you're not stunned by that. But so far, Donovan leads the team in minutes per game at 31.3. Darius is playing 30.4. Evan is playing 30.2. I would anticipate all of those guys are boosted to at least 34 minutes per game and maybe even higher. I do think it's going to be gradual. Like I think in the first round, it's probably, they're playing 33 minutes. And then in the second round, they're playing 34. And then in the conference finals, they're playing 36 to 37. So as that grows, I think their minutes alongside each other will grow. And I think that that's what we're going to see. And then you can put the pieces and parts alongside them that best fit. Like when Evan Mobley has played with DeAndre Hunter at the 4, when those two have been the front court for the Cavs, things have been really, really good for them. Like if you look at Evan Mobley at center, that's when the Cavs are at their best. When you look at Evan Mobley at center and DeAndre Hunter at power forward, the sample size is obviously not as big, but the Cavs are really, really good in those minutes. So far this season, since DeAndre Hunter made his debut, there have been 204 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass, where Evan Mobley has played center and DeAndre Hunter has been the power forward. And there have been a lot of different lineups. The most common one is Donovan Mitchell, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley. That lineup specifically has played 92 possessions and has a net rating of plus 37. As a whole, DeAndre Hunter at the 4, Evan Mobley at the 5, has a net rating in those 204 possessions of plus 24.5. They dominate teams. I think that is something that we will see more of. And then the lineup with the 3 guys I talked about, plus Hunter and plus Strus, is plus 27. So they've been really, really, really good. And I think that those are the lineups that we're going to see an uptick in minutes when the postseason does arrive. Thank you to everyone for participating in the Locked On Cavs mailbag. I'm sorry I did not get to every question. Like there was one in there I really wanted to talk about the Cavs playing zone against the Celtics and how OKC did that, and that like the Cavs are going to play zone against everybody in the postseason. It's just how much zone are they going to play? And I did think that OKC's zone against Boston was interesting because OKC did it playing 2 bigs. And what team can replicate that? The Cavs can replicate that because they also have 2 really good bigs the same way that OKC does. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking about the game against Memphis.